On a mission trip and was really confronted with what does practical faith look like? To me, that was really the culmination of something bigger that I think God was working in my heart to say, there's a real practical need that can be met.
Since I was young, I remember in middle school talking to friends and being like, yep, when I grow up, I'm gonna have kids. I want to adopt the kids.
Our second date that we both had that conversation about, that's how we were feeling called to grow our family. So we've always said that for us, adoption was plan A.
We had been married around 7 years, I think. We started the adoption process, went to all the classes, and we decided we wanted to do international adoption. Started going down that road. A home study done, we had other things done. Approached from a family at church, approached us and said, I know you're in the process of doing international adoption, but are you open to domestic adoption?
Brooklyn, somebody in our church came to us with Trell. It was a family from Grand Haven Christian School, was currently fostering him, and it was going to be an opportunity to adopt him, and we knew him and he knew our family. So we walked through that door. Different circumstances, different situations and family dynamics, but situations that God just so clearly knocked on our door with an opportunity to walk through it with adoption. We brought a little girl into our home who was 5 months old, coming from a really rough situation. She was a part of our family. We had never had it go a different way. We just assumed this was going down a path that we were going to be able to adopt her.
Where they said, okay, in a month she's going to be transitioned out of your home.
The hardest day and probably the worst day of our lives. I would just say through the process, even when I didn't believe it, I said, I don't understand the plan, but I trust the one who made it. And I would just say that over and over, even the days where I'd leave my office at work and literally go in the bathroom and throw up because of how painful that process was. Folks that have a heart for adoption or that have done that is that you're not watching someone else's kids. They're your kids. And whatever God does in our hearts through that process, there's no differentiation. We lose a child that was your child, right? Even though that's that possibility. Fundamentally, I think for me, it started, I put up walls and I was thought I knew what God was doing with this stuff. But maybe I don't get it. And even when you're doing the right things, the wrong things can happen. And I think that was a really, really big moment of growth that definitely caused fear. For a couple of years, I think we would have said, no, we're good, we're done.
Yep.
We're not gonna do this again.
When Rose is less than a year old, we got approached from a family at Grand Haven Christian that we have known for years. And she said, I know you just had Rose, but are you still open to more kids? And immediately the answer was yes. And I hadn't even talked to Mario. It was just, yep, totally fine. We would love to have more children. He's like, okay, I have a family friend who is looking into adoption. And we got connected to this birth mother out of state, a great relationship with each other. We had talked for a few months. She asked lots of questions about our family. We were able to ask her questions, and we had never had that prior in any of our adoptions. A couple months into having relationship with her, she came back and said, yeah, I just don't think I can do this.
Kind of left it at that. We didn't know what that meant. Said, I can't do this. And then cut off all communication. It was radio silence for
a couple months.
Yeah, a couple months.
A few months later, came back to us and said, is it too late?
Yeah.
And it was about 3 weeks before her due date. We said, absolutely, it's not too late. We are here for you. We had to figure out how to get a home study that takes a month to complete, done in less than a month, so we could be down there for his birth.
They told us it's 6 months to get a home study. And I said, how much does it cost to get a social worker for the amount of time that we need? And they're like, really? And I said, we got to do this. We got to get this kid in 3 weeks. They dedicated a full-time social worker to this. We'd get attorneys in Michigan, attorneys in another state. It was an all hands on deck, process to pull this all together.
But Brooklyn and Trell helped pick out clothes and put the bassinet together. And we were unbelievably excited.
On Easter, she texted Mary and said, I'm going in. We jumped in the car and drove 9 hours to go stay at the hospital to be there for when he was born. So we had a good chance to spend some time with his mom the day before, and then get all kind of the paperwork set, and he was born.
He came out and it was beautiful, and I got to hold him. And not long after, you got to come down and hold him. She was very open with, yep, you go ahead and hold him. She held him. Like, I mean, it was a beautiful moment. And he was a beautiful baby.
It was Tuesday, so under the law of the state that we were in, she couldn't sign paperwork for 48 hours. So we stayed in the hospital. He stayed in the room with us. We were caring for him, getting up in the night, doing all the stuff you do with an infant. He was effectively in our care for those 48 hours. On that day, we've got the car seat, we're ready to roll, and everything's done. Like, this is the final step. And that morning she said, can I see him? And we called our attorney, and I said, is that normal? And she was like, might not be. And so she asked to see it. She's his mom, right? And nurse actually came back and said she's not gonna sign the papers. And I immediately went into problem solver mode. Like, I'm like, oh no, my kids are we're not doing this. We're not playing this game. I called the attorney, I called, this. I said, is there anybody that can kind of have a conversation, about this? And they were like, no, that's undue influence. You're not allowed to do that. And so had to kind of sit there, in that moment.
Thought it's best to just leave, and I don't know what that feels like to be in her shoes, and it's fine. We have pictures. That's just what we'll be able to bring home of him with us. So we gathered up our bags full of freshly washed newborn clothes, and walking out of the hospital with an empty car seat is pretty disheartening. There's nothing you can do about it. And it was silent for a really long time.
It was a surreal moment in the sense of having walked down that path before and feeling the certainty that God's gonna move, right? And going it's gonna be in his time. It's always his timing, not mine, really, all these kind of cliches, and going yeah, I thought that before though. I thought there was no chance this baby's gonna leave our house, right? And those emotions just come flooding back.
Okay, now I have to explain to Brooklyn and Trell once again that all this excitement to bring home a new life is gone. He is not coming home with us. So we called and we're like, hey, we're on our way home. And they're like, that's great. How's the baby? And we're like, so he's not coming home with us. And they were quiet. They didn't know what to say. Mario's mom was watching the kids, and she said Brooklyn just heard that, immediately walked away from the phone and laid flat on the floor and just cried. And Trell got really quiet, and he sat on the couch and cried. We were just about South Haven, and get a text from our attorney, and she says, call me. And I'm like, oh, geez. I'm like, what is this, right? I don't want to deal with this. And so I call her, and she goes, you need to turn around. And I'm like, oh, I thought we forgot something. It was did I forget something there? And she said, she changed her mind. She signed the papers. He's at the hospital by himself. At first, it was really hard to believe. Are you serious? Are we gonna drive all the way down there and then they're gonna tell us to come back again with no baby? I can't do it again. So this has to be, and they assured us the papers were signed, she was no longer at the hospital. Called the school and decided to take the kids with us, and knew that it could be a long haul, us being there, and packed up all the kids the next morning. Drove back down to get him. The attorney told me point blank, she said, I'm sorry that you've got your kids in the car, I'm sorry for this. She said, this is gonna be a lot of time, a lot of energy. You don't want to do this. Turn around and go home. We're gonna continue to come. What do we need to do? And she said, this is a big headache for
for a kid that you don't even know. And I said, I agree. I said, but it's not too big of a headache for my son. And so we got in the car. We drove down there. We called the hospital. So I went in there. I said who I was. They brought Moses to me. Hey, bud. Never thought I'd see you again. Took him. Took the few little things that he had, and put him in the car. And we drove to the hotel where we lived with him and the rest of our family for the next week.
The kids look back at that time now where it was such a stressful time, and we were doing all these court dates via Zoom in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 children, one being 18 months old and one being a newborn. It was the most stressful time. But our kids talk about that as like the best vacation that they've ever had. Remember that time when we went down to get Mosey and we got to stay in this place? And I mean, it was very stressful, no doubt. But what a sweet time to sit in 4 walls with the 6 people we love the most.
Yeah.
And just soak up that time.
I think every last bit of control that I thought I had over my life, my family, my children, it's kind of stripped away through this process. It's something we wouldn't have chosen, but now having been through it, it's something we probably wouldn't have any differently.